On the morning of the 11th day, the soldier in the hedge had been in the same position for 261 hours. He had not stood up. He had not sat up. He had moved his head, when he had moved his head, in increments measured in millimetres per minute. His radio was at his right hand. The double-wrapped clingfilm package containing the last 11 days of his own bodily waste was at his left. His partner was 3 feet away, awake, also unmoving, also silent. They had whispered to each other on average 11 words per hour, including the changeover signals. The temperature on the morning of the 11th day was 4 degrees Celsius. The temperature 6 nights earlier had been -2. The radio crackled. The crackle was the extraction signal. The 2 soldiers had been told before the insertion that this might come on the 7th day, or the 9th day, or the 14th day, or not at all. They had not been told what they would do on the 11th day if it did not come. It came. They began the slow extraction. The hide had to be left so that the people who lived in the farmhouse 200 metres downhill, none of whom had any idea the soldiers had been there, would never find a single trace of their presence. Not a single hair, not a single piece of plastic, not a smell. Nothing. This is what the debt actually did. This is a story the channel has not told before. It is not the story of an operation. It is not the story of a contact. It is the story of the 11 days between the insertion and the extraction, when nothing happens, when nothing is supposed to happen, when the success of the entire deployment is measured by the fact that nothing happens. The 2 soldiers in the hedge are composites, reconstructed from the published memoirs of men and women who did this work. James Rennie, Sarah Ford, Andy McNabb, Harry McCallion, Toby Harnden, Mark Urban. And from the ex-operator testimony in the comment sections of every video in this series. The audience has been writing this script, in their own words, for months. This is the video the audience asked for. This is what it actually looked like. The briefing chamber at Bessbrook Mill is in the corner of a converted linen factory in County Armagh, 3 miles outside Newry. The factory was requisitioned by the British Army in 1970. Within a few years it had become, by some accounts, the busiest heliport in the world. 600 flights a week, helicopters in and out of the courtyard every 15 minutes, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. From Bessbrook, the entire South Armagh area of operations was supplied by air. By 1975, it was no longer safe to move troops or stores by road. By 1994, it would not be safe to move them on foot either. Bessbrook was the lung of South Armagh. The 2 operators sit in a briefing room with the operations officer of their detachment, the small unit known across the British Army by half a dozen names. Officially, 14 Field Security and Intelligence Company. Inside the regiment, the Det. To the men and women who served in it, just the unit. It had been formed in 1972, selected and trained by a wing of 22 SAS at a training facility whose precise location was, and remains, classified. Out of every 1,000 applicants in some years, only 17 were ever deployed. 3 detachments operated across the province, each in its own sector. The 2 soldiers in front of the operations officer this morning are South Det. The target package is on the table. They will not be told the name of the man in the farmhouse 200 metres downhill from their proposed hide. They will be told only what to photograph. A specific vehicle, a specific outbuilding, a specific window. They will be given the abort conditions. They will be given the cover for status, the laminated card that does not exist in any file that says, if they are caught, what they are doing in that hedge. The card is destroyed in front of them at the end of the briefing. The kit list is read aloud: the rifle, the radio, the optic, the camera, the clingfilm roll, the empty plastic bottles for water in, water out, the double-bagged removable waste packet, the cold rations, long-range patrol style, freeze-dried, requiring only a few millilitres of water to rehydrate. The doctrine that supports the rations is older than the debt itself. It comes from the long-range patrol units of the 1960s. It assumes no cooking, no fire, no heat signature, no smoke, no smell. Everything that the body produces, sweat, urine, feces, food packaging, hair, comes out of the hide with the operator who put it in. The briefing ends. The two operators walk to the helicopter pad. The Wessex is already running. 6 o'clock. The insertion is at 0240 hours in the morning. The pilot drops them 4 kilometres from the target. 3 kilometres into the move, the second helicopter, which had taken off behind them as a decoy, peels off in a different direction. This is standard. South Armagh, in the mid-1980s, is the most surveilled square mile of the British Isles, and surveilled in both directions. The Provisional IRA's South Armagh Brigade had stationed observers across the high ground at Slieve Gullion and along the hedges of every secondary road. Any helicopter that landed had to be assumed to have been seen. The trick was to make sure no one knew which helicopter dropped the men and where. They move on foot from the drop point. Each man carries about 100 pounds. They move at the pace of a single body length per minute through dead ground, a low watercourse, a ditch line, a strip of woodland the satellite map shows is impassable to vehicles. The terrain in South Armagh is small fields, dense hedgerows, low hills and bog. Slieve Gullion rises in the north. The Republic of Ireland border is south. The two soldiers will be inside the hide before first light. The construction of a covert rural hide is the most quietly skilled thing either of them has ever done. The hedge they have selected is on a slope above the target farmhouse. Above the hedge is an unworked field. The field has been worked this season for hay, but the hay is in. The hide will be cut into the bottom of the hedge, into the gap where bramble meets root meets ditch. The two soldiers cut nothing. To cut a branch is to leave a stub a herdsman might one day notice. Instead, they push, they part. They thread their bodies into the hedge, root by root, slowly, until they are no longer outside the hedge, but inside it. They unroll the netting. The netting is the colour of last year's bramble. They thread it from the inside outward, until from the field side the gap they have made is invisible, and from the road side the gap they have made never existed. They lie down. One on his stomach, looking down the slope, one on his side, facing the route they came in on. They will not change their positions for 14 hours. They will, after that, change positions 1 millimetre at a time, on a rotation so slow that were a passer-by to stand outside the hedge for an entire minute, they would see nothing move at all. This is the hide. From this moment until the radio crackles, neither soldier will stand, neither soldier will sit upright, neither soldier will speak above a whisper, neither soldier will be seen. Days 1 to 3 are the establishment days. The body is at its most uncomfortable in days 1 to 3. The hips, the shoulder blades, the angle of the head. By the end of the second day, the soldier on his stomach has worked out which of the 3 pairs of socks he was issued is least painful when balled up under his hip. He does this in millimetres. By the end of the third day, his partner has noticed that he is doing it. The watch and rest rotation begins, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. The man on rest does not sleep deeply. He sleeps in the way a cat sleeps in a kitchen, eyes closed, body still, the layer of consciousness underneath that hears every door. The changeover is silent. The man on rest, when his shoulder is touched, opens his eyes, takes the optic, takes the position, becomes the man on watch. The man on watch becomes the man on rest. The changeover takes approximately 15 seconds. It is the only physical movement either soldier makes that involves more than one limb. The whisper protocol is the part that takes the longest to learn. The body of the man you are whispering to is 3 feet from your mouth. The body of any other person on this hillside is somewhere between 300 meters and 3,000 meters. The whisper has to carry exactly the first distance and nothing of the second. The men who designed this system at the training wing in the early 1970s modelled it on close target reconnaissance work in Borneo. The whisper is shaped by the throat, not the lungs. The chest does not rise. The vowels are softened. The consonants, the t, the k, the s, are not the consonants you would use ordering a coffee in a Belfast bar. They are softer. They are the consonants you would use telling someone in a bedroom that you love them. 11 words per hour on average. This is not a doctrine number. This is the rule of thumb the operators describe when they describe their own work, and that includes the changeover signals, the radio cadence, the food signals, the water signals. 11 words. In an entire hour, 11 words. The radio bursts go out at set intervals. The radio is encrypted. The burst transmissions are timed so that a listening station in the Republic would, even if they intercepted them, hear them as fragments, a moment of static, a moment of nothing. The throat microphone is hidden under the collar. The earpiece, in the early 1980s versions, is wired into the ear and held in place with surgical tape. By the end of the 11 days, the tape has loosened and re-stuck on every cycle of the operator's sweat. The skin underneath will have small chemical sores. The body discipline is the part that, to the audience, sounds the most unbelievable. The man on watch needs to urinate. He produces, on the average diet, 2 litres of urine a day. The urine goes into a clearly labelled bottle. The bottle is sealed. The bottle goes into a second bag. He needs, every 2 or 3 days, on a high-fibre cold ration, to defecate. He defecates into a sheet of clingfilm. The clingfilm is folded. The package is double-bagged in heavy-duty plastic. The package goes into the rucksack. At the end of the deployment, the package will leave the hide with the operator. There will be no trace of either body in the hedge. This is the operator's own account, across multiple memoirs and on the channel's previous video about the debt, in a comment from a man who served in this unit and who described his own years on this work in exactly the language above. He averaged, he said, 11 days at a time in an OP in South Armagh and other locations. Cold rations, pissing into a bottle, shitting into clingfilm. He had, he said, never seen it in a film. He was right. He hadn't. The food is also disciplined. The 2 operators each have 11 days of cold ration. They will not consume more than 2,000 calories a day. Hunger, after the 3rd day, becomes a low, constant noise that the operator does not really hear anymore. Thirst is more dangerous. Dehydration, in a cold weather hide where the body is not visibly sweating, can sneak up. Each operator carries a calculated water ration and refuses, by discipline, to exceed it. By day 4, the body has changed. The skin under the clothing has stopped producing the dead skin it produced on day 1. The hair on the scalp has started to feel like cotton. The fingertips, where they have been holding the optic, have started to pucker. The eyes on the man on watch have learned to look at the farmhouse for 40 minutes at a time without blinking out of habit, and to blink only when blinking is biological. The mind, which on day 1 was busy, has slowed. By day 4, the mind is in the state the survival manuals call operational economy, running on the smallest possible inputs. The target is the farmhouse 200 metres downhill. The target has not, so far, been seen. A woman in a green raincoat has come out twice. A man on a quad bike. A dog. The man on the quad bike is, possibly, the man whose vehicle is on the target list. The two operators are not sure. They have photographed the bike. They have photographed the angle of the bike to the outbuilding. They have photographed the dog. The optic is a fixed long lens. The camera is silent. The exposures are made at intervals so far apart that any reflection off the lens will not, even accidentally, line up with the angle of the sun in a way that could give them away. The film, when it is sent back to the operations office, will contain 340 exposures, of which perhaps 15 will be operationally useful, of which perhaps 3 will, at any later date, be looked at by a name on a list that the two operators in the Hedge will never be told. This is the work. The work is not the contact. The work is the photograph. Days 4 to 7 are the cold weather days. The temperature drops at night to -2. The two operators are in cold weather Gore-Tex, under cold weather wool, under cold weather wicking, under a thin layer of skin that the cold has stopped trying to warm. They do not shiver. To shiver is to move. To move is to be seen. They have instead slowed their metabolism by trick, by training, by the consumption of small amounts of high-fat ration every hour, to the point where their core remains warm enough to think and their extremities are simply ignored. The man on his stomach cannot feel his feet on the morning of the 7th day. He has not felt them since the morning of the 5th. He has, however, been moving his toes inside his boots at the rate of 3 slow flexes per minute, on a private rotation no one in the regiment ever taught him, because no one ever needed to. The body, after the 3rd day, teaches itself. The mental discipline is its own work. By day 7, the man on rest is starting to dream, when he closes his eyes, of moving. He dreams of standing up. He dreams of walking to a kitchen. He dreams of the smell of bread. He dreams of his wife. The man on watch, when his shoulder is touched, takes the optic. The dreams pass. The protocols for what happens if the target is contacted are different from the protocols for what happens if the target is not contacted. If the target is contacted, if the operators see in the optic the specific man on the list doing the specific thing on the list, the radio cadence changes. A coded burst goes out. The operations officer at Bessbrook hears it. Other elements move. Other photographs are taken from other angles. Nothing the two operators in the Hedge do in that moment changes. They remain still. They remain silent. They remain inside the Hedge, and they wait. The protocols for what happens if the target is not contacted are the protocols of these 11 days. Patience, silence, cold rations, the clingfilm, the bottle, the whisper, the waiting. The targets are not contacted. On day 7, the man on the quad bike comes out of the outbuilding with another man. The second man is not on the target list. The two operators photograph both men in case. They are, by this point, photographing in a way that is closer to reflex than to decision. Days 8 to 11 are the endurance arc. The body is in its slowest gear. The mind is in its slowest gear. The temperature on the morning of day 8 is 4 degrees. The temperature on the morning of day 10 is 4 degrees. The temperature on the morning of day 11 will be 4 degrees. The weather over South Armagh in early spring has settled. The extraction signal might come on any of these days. It might also not come. The two operators were told, before the insertion, that the extraction might come on the 7th day, or the 9th day, or the 14th day, or not at all. They were not told what they would do on the 11th day if it did not come. In practice, what they would do is continue. The rations had been cut for 14 days. The radio would, if necessary, deliver an extension. The discipline that had held them in the hedge for 8 days would, if necessary, hold them for 14. It was the same discipline. Decades later, when men who did this work would describe it to each other, they would describe it the same way, no matter which one of them was speaking, no matter which detachment, no matter which year of which decade of the long war. The silence, the cold, the clingfilm. The two soldiers in the hedge on the 11th day are doing the work that Rennie, Ford, McNabb and McCallion all wrote about, and that the channel's own commenters described year after year in 3 or 4 words. A covert rural hide that has been occupied for 11 days has, by day 11, accumulated a small, invisible, biological footprint. There is a faint depression in the earth where the man on his stomach has lain. There is a fainter depression where the man on his side has lain. There is, in the ditch behind the hedge, a very small, very clean area where the rucksack has rested. There is no waste, there is no packaging, there is no food residue, there is no urine residue, the bottles are sealed and double-bagged, there is no breath stain on a leaf. The hedge has, very slightly, accepted the two bodies as part of its own architecture. The job of the extraction is to remove the bodies and to let the hedge, over the next 48 hours of rain and wind, forget that they were there. The radio crackles. The crackle is the extraction signal. The two operators take 10 minutes lying still before they move. They are not, in those 10 minutes, listening. They are, in those 10 minutes, allowing the muscle memory of 11 days to catch up to the fact that the deployment is over. Then the man on watch closes the optic. The man on rest unwraps the netting from inside. They begin to thread their bodies back out of the hedge, root by root, in reverse. The waste packet goes into the rucksack first. The rifle goes second. The radio goes third. Nothing is left. The extraction route is the insertion route in reverse. The walk to the pickup takes 90 minutes. The two operators do not speak. The pickup is at a road junction the satellite map shows as a passing place. A vehicle arrives. The vehicle is a Q car, a civilian pattern vehicle with covert radios, covert speakers, covert microphones, mountings that are not visible from outside, but that the operators feel under their palms as they get in. The driver is a third member of the unit who has been waiting in the lay-by at the appointed time. The Q cars, like the throat microphones, like the encrypted radios, are tools the unit has used in this province since the early 1970s. Proven, refined, never publicly catalogued. The vehicle drives to Bessbrook. The two operators do not speak in the vehicle either. By the time they are inside the gate, they have been in continuous operational silence for 11 days and 12 hours. The debrief is in a different room from the briefing. The operations officer is waiting. The photographs are downloaded from the camera onto a closed system within the hour. The waste packet, and this is the part the channel's commenters always end on, is handed over to be properly disposed of, off base, in a way that produces, even at this final stage, no biological signature of the men who carried it. The clingfilm. The double-bagged plastic. 11 days of evidence that nothing was there. The two operators are given a meal. They eat it slowly. The first stomach of warm food after 11 days of cold ration is a strange thing to the body. It does not feel like reward. It feels like work. They are given clean clothing. They are given a bed. The unit's medical officer checks them briefly before they sleep. The skin soars under the ear from the earpiece tape. The pressure points on the hips. The toes, which have come back. The man on his stomach is told, gently, that the toes will tingle for 48 hours, and then they will be fine, and that he has done this before, and that it is, as the medical officer says, the same every time. The medical officer has been the unit's doctor for 9 years. He has seen this exact tingling in exactly the same toes, on exactly the same kind of soldier, coming out of exactly the same kind of hide 100 times. The conversation is 40 seconds long. There is nothing else to say. In the operations office, the photographs are being sorted. The face of the man on the quad bike is being matched against a card index of known and suspected members of the South Armagh Brigade. He is matched, possibly, against 3 different cards. The outbuilding is being checked against a list of known weapons holdings. The vehicle's number plate is being run through the vehicle registry at Belfast and against a separate index held only by the unit. The contact may or may not come of any of this. The photograph that the man on his stomach took on the 8th day, with the bracketed angles, will sit in the operations file for years. It will perhaps surface in a successor file 3 years later, when a different operation against a different cell finds its way to the same farmhouse. It will perhaps never surface. The operator who took it will not, in either case, ever be told what came of it. That is the discipline of the work. The 2 soldiers sleep for 36 hours. When they wake, the operations officer offers them a 48-hour pass. They take it. One of them goes to a pub in Newry that the unit has cleared for use, on the careful understanding that the regulars are vetted and the conversation is unrecorded. The other reads a book. By the 3rd day, they are both back on rotation. The next briefing is on the calendar. The next Hedge is somewhere in the South Armagh area of operations, waiting. The 2 soldiers in the Hedge are now somewhere in their 60s. The hide they occupied for 261 hours has not been documented in any official publication. The intelligence they gathered fed into a contact that may or may not appear in the published catalogue of Troubles-era operations. They have, in the 4 decades since, told their story to no one outside their unit. The audience watching this video has, in the comment section of the previous video in this series, told the channel exactly what they were doing, including, in one 28-like comment, the clingfilm bag. They are saying, in their own words, "This is what we did. This is what no one has ever filmed. Make this video. This is that video."